Hey everybody, I'm Tyler, host of the Tyler Knows Everything podcast, where the nose is crossed out because I always want to learn more. My guest today is Joseph Trahan. He's a Democrat. I'm a Republican. The point of this was we were friends before the interview, friends during, and then friends after. And that's the way it should be. Please welcome Joseph Trahan.
Tyler
knows
everything.
All right, everybody. Well, we're here with Joseph Trahan. And, man, I appreciate you coming in, being such a trooper.
Of course, thanks for the invite.
They're working on the AC this week. So I'm looking at the thermostat now. It's literally 88 degrees in here. And my boy's here over in a suit. So I really appreciate the swag. And I asked him, I said, we can reschedule if you want to. He said, no, man, I'm down to come. So I really appreciate that.
Of course.
Well, you have a pretty cool story because you moved out of Beaumont and moved to one of the coolest cities in Texas, probably Austin. And typically when, a young individual moves to a city like Austin, they don't come back.
Right.
But you made it back.
I did.
And so just tell us the full circle of how that came about.
So first and foremost, I was born and raised here in Beaumont.
Mm-hmm.
My family was always very involved in community activities. My dad's parents, Lois and Howard Trahan, were entrenched in the local civil rights movement and were champions against causes that counteracted racism and segregation. And then my mother's parents, Ed and Faye Woodsmall, were at the police department for a combined nearly 60 years and were leaders in that area. And my grandmother was the first female in the city of Beaumont and had established a number of different organizations and within the department. And so I was able to witness really just people that had a love for their community.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it came time for me to graduate high school, I had to make a decision. Did I want to stay here or did I want to go off? And I ultimately decided that I want to go off because I wanted to expand my understanding of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes in Southeast Texas, you can easily get into a bubble.
Right.
And these are these homogenous groups. And I think that's one of ultimately the downfalls of our political process here is that people are grouped into certain boxes.
Sure.
And they rarely ever venture out. So I went to Austin. I was really involved there in politics and campus leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And once I graduated, I had actually not planned on coming back. But
okay.
A former congressman of ours, Nick Lamson, had encouraged me to come back because he believed that we needed young professionals to stay here.
Sure.
Because he was of the belief, and still is, that our brain trust is being depleted and being ceded to places like Houston, Austin, and Dallas because there are more opportunities.
Right.
And so once I decided to come back and get involved with his activities, I started really seeing a lot of these grassroots efforts, individuals that truly cared about their community, causes that they were very passionate about. And I realized that maybe, just maybe, an everyday person like myself can use what I learned and experienced in Austin
mm-hmm.
and apply it here to the city of Beaumont and ultimately try to encourage other people to get involved in their communities.
Yeah. What all things did you get involved in at UT?
So when I was at UT, I was involved in student government, university Democrats, and I was appointed to different advisory groups.
Right.
And so that enabled me to be exposed to people not only of different religious views, but cultures,
mm-hmm.
Nationalities. And it made me have a greater appreciation for all of God's children. Because I think oftentimes we have this narrow view of what it means to be American or Texan.
Right.
And my experiences in Austin just totally did an about-face to that and inspired me to speak out against myopic views when it comes to taking an active part in your community.
And then what was your academic, was it business?
So it was a dual program. I did public relations and business foundation, so I went back and forth with the Moody College of Communication and then the Macomb School of Business.
Yeah, and so before Nick Lamson kind of talked you into coming
mm-hmm.
back, what were your plans before that?
I'd intended to work either as some sort of press secretary for a government agency or for an advertising agency.
Yeah.
Like C3, and C3 puts on events like South by Southwest and ACL.
Oh, okay.
But ultimately, I decided to come back.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah.
it was a culmination of things. It wasn't only having a great mentor like Mr. Lamson, but also being with my family, getting to reconnect with individuals in the community that they had worked with in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s to effect positive change.
Right.
And they really motivated and inspired me, and still to this day, to be active and to get involved and to try and encourage other young professionals and millennials, recent graduates,
mm-hmm.
to stay here, try to find opportunity, and if there's not opportunity, push our elected officials to push themselves to try and seek out diversity and economic development.
Yeah, and I always try to mirror my guests a little bit on what I'm wearing. And so if you're on the video right now, I've got my Southeast Texas Young Professionals Organization shirt. I'm on the steering committee for that, and that's basically our mission, is to try to encourage individuals that are 21 to 40 years old. We're a division of the Greater Beaumont Chamber of Commerce. And we make the joke sometimes, our friends that are in business, over 40, like your friend Nick, they say, well, what about us? And I said, well, that's called the chamber.
Right.
You already have your own thing. So we get together for monthly luncheons, breakfast with the boss, and we do networking after hours. And a lot of us are friends outside of that organization as well. And I don't know about you, but I've found plenty to do here. A lot of people say Beaumont's boring or there's not enough events going on, but I keep a pretty busy schedule.
Right. And I see that on social media.
Yeah,
and I actually am a member of YPO.
That's right.
I've been so busy, and honestly, I probably need to reprioritize. I need to start going to those meetings because I see on Facebook events, for example, different meet and greets, networking events. I think there was one recently at
the Art Museum.
There was the Art Museum, but there was also... Wasn't there one at the Green Light Americana?
Yeah, that's right. That was
okay.
that might have been the most recent one. The one before that was Art Museum.
But I'm definitely going to start showing up.
Yeah.
It looked like a great group.
Oh, yeah. Super fun. It's one of my favorite events. I always tell everybody Breakfast with the Boss is the one I like so much because you can't just go up into a large corporation like Baptist Hospital or something and say, hey, I'd like a meeting with the CEO. But with Breakfast with the Boss, that's what we do. We have an influential member of the community that sits down with us. Usually it's around a group of 30, have breakfast with us, tell their origin story, and then you get a lot of one-on-one time for questions afterwards. And almost every one of those that I've gone to, those individuals in high-ranking positions have networked with me on social media and followed me personally, and I follow them, and we comment on stuff. And you're kind of on that first-name basis when you get into that setting.
That's awesome. And I will say I agree with you that there is this perception that there's not much to do in the city of Beaumont. In fact, I was of that view whenever I was a student in college. And I actually got an internship over the summer with Lenny Caballero over at Event Facilities. And he opened my eyes to just the phenomenal city-sponsored events, as well as facilities, whether it's Julie Rogers Theater, Civic Center, the Events Center, the Jefferson Theater. I knew nothing about that, and I had lived here for majority of my life. And I think that's the case with a lot of people. And as we're starting to see with a number of city council members that are supportive of trying to have the city lead in events, is actually encouraged other entities to come on and bring their own performers, acts. And so I'm really excited about that, and I hope that it continues to grow. And more importantly, I hope that business leaders will take more of an active role in meeting the city at least halfway with a lot of the activities that they're pushing.
Yeah, I think so. Even one of my friends who's a leader in the community, and he's kind of outside of the millennial age. He has a hashtag called Invest in a Millennial, and it's where he tries to mentor someone in his organization, to work their way up the ranks, take the reins one day, and basically just what it says, invest in a younger person.
I like that.
Everybody's. From time to time, they'll say they're self-made, but they're really not. They always had a mentor somewhere along the way. And so, speaking of mentors, did you get to help anybody on their campaigns here recently?
Not in the recent cycle. I definitely had my choices, but I've made it a point of not really being as vocal because I'm friends with many of them.
Yeah.
But I will say that I undoubtedly supported Jefferson Fisher in his election, and he's 30 years old.
Yeah,
and he is the epitome of what it is to be young and wanting to take an active role in your community. And I suspect that he will continue to be engaged because he gave the incumbent a run for his money.
Yeah, he did. That was exciting. The previous cycle, it might have been when you were still in Austin, but we had an at-large candidate, Will Robbins, who was around the same age and also did really well. At-large is tough because it's only the top two, and usually sometimes there's 10, but he had several thousand votes, where in Beaumont, there's only about 10 or 11,000 total voters. And so he did a really good job. It was his first campaign ever, outside of the county, committeemen and things like that within the party.
And his actually sounds very familiar.
Yeah, so he's in Jefferson County Republican Party.
Okay.
Like myself, I'm a state delegate for the Hardin County Republican Party. And just like you talked about earlier, me and you, we go to so many events together, chit chat, hey, what's up on social media? And we sit across the table now and have civil conversation. And a lot of people just think that's not possible. And I keep telling them, like, look, I have a lot of friends that are not Republican.
Right.
And I get along with all of them. You know, there may be things that come up that they have their set A ideals and their set B ideals, and they may be crisscrossed for me and them.
Right.
But we're not arguing about it. You know, I mainly just focus on common sense, like what makes sense.
And, I think a lot of that comes down to an individual being willing to be open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
I think oftentimes, and this is everyone, we're all human, we tend to seek confirmation bias.
Right.
And so you will have individuals that will only watch Fox News or they will only watch MSNBC. I watch both.
Right, because you're not going to know what's going on.
Right.
Yeah, if you only watch one echo chamber, you really have to get a full circle picture. And just like there's a lot of Republicans that probably, in this area especially, that wouldn't speak kindly of Nick Lampson. But I actually went to it was a YPO event probably before he moved here that he was a guest at, and it just so happened that day I was wearing my suit with the American flag lapel, and it was early morning, so nobody else was really dressed up. And he made a point to come up to me and, find out who I was, because I kind of have the politician look going on. And
maybe that's foreshadowing.
Yeah, it could be. And I would never be like, oh, well, I'm Tyler, I'm Republican, I don't like it. I would say, hey, there's so much I can learn from you. He's a former congressman. He's run multiple campaigns. I always take it as a learning opportunity from anyone. I'm never going to shun someone away just because of how they register to vote.
Right. He definitely is a great man. Obviously, I'm biased.
Yeah.
But I just don't know of any other leader in our community that is going to be in the history books since Jack Brooks. Right. And I think that we have to get to a point where we need to vote for leadership and proven effectiveness over party. I would be willing to vote for a moderate Republican if that individual was a proven leader, if that someone had serious things that they could offer the community. And I will say, he has run a number of campaigns. He's run 20, and he's only lost 4. Mm-hmm. So that's a pretty good...
there's obviously things you can learn from someone who's been there.
Right.
Who am I to judge him? And I've never ran one, for sure.
Well, you should.
But so for now, I'm just kind of helping people. I work on their steering committees, help people in the background. One of the ones I was proud of to be on the steering committee was Mitch Templeton, who won judge and one of the first Republican judges in Jefferson County for 100 years. And Mitch is a very good guy. He had a lot of you could tell from the voting statistics, he had a lot of crossover,
right?
Because he's well liked by a lot of people.
I mean, I had never met him before until it was during his campaign, and he made it a point of coming up to me. And he has a tendency to want to seek common ground whenever he initially meets someone, and so he brought up the point that we're both Texas X's,
right?
I had no major issue with him. I think that he is an effective leader, and he's someone that I do have a level of respect for, simply because he doesn't come off as an extremist.
Right.
Maybe he is behind closed doors, but from a public setting, he doesn't want to make me go vomit.
Yeah, for sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, and he's one of those that, what was I going to say? So he did a really good job in the campaign of talking to everyone, not just talking to, his local circuit. But I do believe that in the future, I was going to get your advice on this, for your judicial elections, it almost seems like they should be nonpartisan, similar to city council, similar to school board, just because of the nature of what they're doing as their job. What do you think?
Well, I definitely agree with you, because that is a common sense perspective, as we had talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But what we have seen with municipal elections, city council elections, the local parties got involved, even though it was supposed to be nonpartisan.
That's true.
I saw a lot of that more so with the Jefferson County Republican Party on their social media than I did the local Democratic Party. But regardless, they both had some sort of involvement with it. And I think that we have become so partisan that even if someone runs in a nonpartisan race, they want to know, what is their voting record?
Yeah.
I've seen so many times, who did you vote for in the presidential election? What party do you identify with? And of course, obviously, to be like, well, what does city government have to do with government passing Medicaid expansion? Or, something like that is more of a state and federal responsibility and not the responsibility of someone in Ward 2, for example.
Right, yeah.
And so, I don't know. I think that it would be nice for things like that to be nonpartisan, but I don't think that people would.
You think it's going to come out anyways?
It's going to come out anyways.
And that's interesting because Beaumont, unlike Austin, it's a lot easier to be popular in Beaumont. And I've always said that kind of in my business community or my business circle for networking, in a humble way, I'm pretty popular in Beaumont. Mm-hmm. There's only 100,000 people. I have a lot of, friends and, social media followers and, even people that I don't know that come up to me and say, hey, I saw you at this or this event. But if I were doing the same thing in Houston, I would not be popular. There's just too many people.
Right.
Similar to Austin, even at the university, I went to Stephen F. Austin where it was about 14,000 people at the time. Mm-hmm. UT's got over 90,000?
About 50,000 or so.
Oh, okay.
That are who are admitted, who are current students, but hundreds of thousands in alumni.
Yeah, but my point is for a nonpartisan election in Jefferson County or Beaumont, just the city of Beaumont, those people are already popular. They've been popular for years, especially with most of their job titles being business owner, lawyer,
It seems to be the trend in this town.
Yeah, so there's not really an unknown unknown incumbent where they don't really know much about what they're affiliated with during a primary campaign or a general election. It seems like because it's a little bit easier to be popular, I think you're right. I think a judicial election they're gonna know what they are anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
for sure.
Well, yeah. One thing that I'm interested in is fitness, and I like to run outside. But every time I'm out there breathing the air in Southeast Texas, I get a little worried, and I read things because I want to live a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do a whole lot of harmful things to my body. I eat healthy, work out a lot, and I don't think that I put anything in my body that would increase my chances of cancer. However, I'm breathing air from one of the highest cancer-causing areas. And so that worries me because I didn't live here all my life, but I got here, it was 2005. So I've been here since 2005. Don't really plan on going anywhere. And so what are my chances of living a long life? What's your
Well, I think that's just, it would, honestly, it is alarming to me that we have such more of a focus on industry expansion and less of a focus and prioritization of environmental safety and the health of our citizens. From what I have seen, there seems to be this mindset that being for economic development and being for environmental protection are mutually exclusive. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely disagree. I think that you can have common sense approaches to mandating certain regulations of private industry, and private industry can still continue to grow and thrive. For example, there was a recent lawsuit that was announced by Environmental Texas against Valero for a number of emissions violations. There has also been an issue with a green energy plant in Port Arthur known as Port Arthur Steam Energy. And Port Arthur Steam Energy had 15 employees and is actually owned by a conservative Republican. This conservative Republican, and I mentioned this because this isn't a partisan issue.
Right.
He became outraged when it was made known to him that because of a letter that was written by the sitting county judge, it effectively shut down his company. Because I don't know if you're familiar with Oxbow, but calcining plant.
Yeah, so I know that like the employees at Oxbow and the equipment, they get filthy.
Right. From
whatever it is that they're doing. And maybe you know a little bit more about...
Right. I do. With Port Arthur Steam Energy, they are a green energy plant. What they would do is they would capture the heat from Oxbow and convert it into steam energy.
Okay.
So as a result, the exhaust that was being pushed out with the stacks, with Port Arthur Steam Energy being in... full productivity, it reduced the velocity at which everything was pushed up, and so it enabled those pollutants to circumvent a TCEQ monitor because it wouldn't be as low to ground level, where that TCEQ monitor that was installed was designed so under the impression that Port Arthur Steam Energy would be in business. And so with Port Arthur CM Energy no longer in business, it has made it to where they are able, in my view, to circumvent the TCEQ monitor and emit an excessive amount of sulfur dioxide, which has been known to cause respiratory issues and other health-related issues. And so to your point about, someone that is interested in being physically fit and is concerned about their health, when we look at entities such as Valero, we look at entities such as Oxbow, and the way in which county government approaches them, I think that we can do a better job. Because, for example, in Harris County, they have within their county government an entire department dedicated to making sure that those petrochemical plants are within compliance, or if they are near non-containment, taking a corrective action to reduce their emissions. And I think that we should be able to do that here in the county, and you will actually be seeing more of that in the news in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and is a lot of the pollution day-to-day activities, or is it from issues that arise from like accidents or?
Well, it depends. So you have situations where there may be accidents, but could also be where they're just releasing emissions, where there are different times when they have to release some of their energy for whatever reason. Or it has to do with, in the case of Oxbow, where they're emitting, like for example, Oxbow is responsible for over 80% of the sulfur dioxide emissions in Jefferson County. Oh, okay. And they are among the top 6 for emissions in the state of Texas. So we actually emit more sulfur dioxide from Oxbow in Port Arthur than the ExxonMobil plant does in Baytown.
Oh, wow. And that's a big plant over there in Baytown, yeah. And that was one of the recent accidents they had over there in the Baytown area, where there was that cloud of something kind of hovering over.
And so it's gotten to where more people are paying attention.
Yeah. Because we're all breathing the same air.
And we do have high cancer rates, which is true. It's not coincidence.
Yeah.
We have high instances of asthma. I mean, you look at disparities, it's oftentimes lower income individuals, minority individuals that have higher rates of cancer and respiratory issues because they are living closer to plants. And people have the audacity to say, well, they should just simply get up and move. Well, if that obviously, to me, is an implication of your own privilege, if you take that mindset, because for poor people, individuals living in poverty, or people who are living paycheck to paycheck, they can't simply get up and move.
Right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, even for me, that'd be a big undertaking just to move for no reason.
Right.
It's one thing if you're moving for a job and you have a purpose, but just moving for the heck of it, that's a lot of things to get in order. And yeah, I've driven down in those parts of Port Arthur where there's a plant on one side of the road and a neighborhood on the other, and I mean, you can just see things. And for the most part, a lot of that stuff you see is steam, but sometimes it's not. So there's chemicals somewhere, and I just can't imagine living in that house right there. And like I said, we're even the guys that are making the most money, the plant managers, the CEO, they're still going home to a home in Southeast Texas usually, and we're all breathing the same air.
Right.
So
and oftentimes you will have a lot of the plant workers that will live outside of Jefferson County. Because what I found was interesting, and I learned this during a recent campaign with the Census Bureau and some other government organizations, that Jefferson County is actually at the bottom of earnings when compared to surrounding counties. Right. And oftentimes that can be attributed to people that may work here and utilize the roads and water and sewage and police departments and fire departments, but their taxes are going and their homes are, you know what I'm saying? They're going and living in Hardin County, Orange County. And so it's unfortunate all around.
Oh, yeah. I live in Lumberton, and there's a steady flow of traffic on 69 South, every morning, and then a steady flow of 69 North every evening. So there's definitely a big influx of people that are coming for the day.
Yeah.
And then they're going home to like a bedroom community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, while you were in Austin, we had a little situation with BISD going on, and the TEA took over, cleaned some things up. And how are we doing now?
My understanding is that there's still room for improvement, but we've come a long way in the last 5 to 6 years. I believe that we have to do a better job as a school district in showing our appreciation for teachers and counselors. I do think that they are underpaid. I think that there are a lot of job responsibilities that go above and beyond simply teaching a class or counseling students in an office, where you're having to do scheduling, you're having to do testing, you're having to be a nurse, a therapist, a parent, sometimes bringing food for your students, providing them school supplies.
Yeah.
So there's a whole gamut of issues that
And
exist.
behavior,
Behavior is a major one. And oftentimes, yes, it has to do with a lack of parental involvement. It also has to do with a lack of stability in the classroom. If you're having substitute teachers coming and going, if you have an overflow of students in classrooms itself, which is what we have seen in Marshall Middle School, then it's going to exacerbate the situation.
Yeah.
But I do have faith that people like Dr. Allen, who was recently instated as the new superintendent, loves the district, and I look forward to seeing what she does during her tenure, however long that is, to make some improvements within the district. Because I think there still is room for improvement, but I also think we have to be able to recognize that perception is not always reality.
Yeah.
Like we talked about several moments ago, earlier on in this interview, is that people have this perception that Beaumont is boring. Well, we talked about the events that take place and the projects that are going on. Similarly, with the school district, we have phenomenal teachers.
Mm-hmm.
My aunt is a counselor at Westbrook, and she loves her students, and she has a great relationship with them. There's this sort of camaraderie.
Yeah.
So I think that we have a major PR improvement that needs to be done, because there have been good things occur since the takeover.
Right.
We have formidable and capable school board members. And so it just takes time. And it also has to take a willingness to give us a chance.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I was actually a BISD employee the year before the takeover.
Mm-hmm.
And so how that came about was the Ozan gymnastics coach, he got moved into like an assistant principal position or a curriculum director. And it was in the middle of the season. It was like October, and the season was about to start. And they needed just someone to coach gymnastics, teach like 4 PE classes of gymnastics and gymnastics team. So they kind of hired me on as a long-term sub.
Okay.
And I finished out the year, finished out the season, had some good success with the kids and a great time. But what I learned from being there is that there were hundreds of other positions that had permanent, or what they called permanent subs. Mm-hmm. And it was basically just unfilled positions. And some of them were chemistry and high-level math.
Core classes.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, there's no way that a sub can come in there and know what they're doing about chemistry.
Right.
And they found out I had a minor in biology and chemistry, and they were trying to get me to go full-time. I was like, no, I'm just helping out.
Yeah.
I'm just here for gymnastics. I don't really want to teach chemistry right now. But when the TA came in, they kind of cleaned a lot of that up, because the kids were wondering if I was going to come back next year. And I said, no, the TA wants a certified teacher, because I have a college degree, but I don't have a teaching certificate. Okay. And they said, you can work on that. I was like, I'm just kind of filling in. So they ended up getting a certified teacher to fill that position and many of the other positions. But yeah, that was something that was going on, back. I was also there. They had kind of a scandal with the test scores at that particular campus, where there was like a principal.
Right, Lambert.
I think so. And I guess it was, to show success of your school, you're kind of judged by test scores.
Right. And, I was a student at BISD, and I could tell you that...
it was also attendance fraud, because that's where the money comes from.
I enjoyed my education. I had phenomenal teachers. No one helped me with my tax when we used to have tax testing. And so I do think that there were some unfortunate circumstances that occurred, outright criminal.
Yeah.
And the people that were responsible have been brought to justice. And I think that we have to do a better job of moving forward and recognizing that we cannot grow, we cannot prosper if we're too busy looking over our shoulder and behind us and pointing at, well, back in the day or 5 years ago, which is what some elected officials like to do in their re-campaigning times.
Right, yeah. And so what's your career role now?
So at the moment, I'm just the personal assistant to the Vice President of Operations at Riceland Healthcare, which happens to be Nick Lampson.
Yeah.
But I'm looking to explore different career options and see about growing.
Yeah, I've got a friend of mine over there. I probably can't pronounce his name right. Suja,
yeah,
right?
Shuja.
Shuja, yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
And he's from London, right?
Yes.
Okay,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's from London. He is the Vice President of Marketing for Rice, and he's also the personal assistant of Tahir Javed, who's the owner. And
the owner. Yeah.
They're all great individuals. I think oftentimes they can be misunderstood, cultural differences.
Right.
But as a whole, they have contributed quite a lot of positive things, economic growth, jobs, philanthropy to our area.
Yeah, same thing. People give them some flack sometimes about, like you said, cultural differences or maybe religious differences. But I've sat down with them, and I'm like, bro, we got to hang out again, man. He's such a cool guy.
Yeah, and
he's always traveling a lot.
Oh yeah, she was in North Carolina just the other day,
Yeah,
for business, or Las Vegas, or out of the country.
Almost every week, yeah. And we're kind of similar, like how we do our Instagram and our Facebook. So we kind of jive with each other on that regard. If he's in an airport, he's going to take a picture of him like working on a laptop with an inspirational quote, a bunch of hashtags. So, but he's in marketing, and
right. And to your point about people having a misunderstanding of cultural differences, I had attended one of the mosques off Cardinal.
Yeah.
And it was an interfaith event. It was for members of the community outside of the Islamic faith to celebrate with them the breaking of Ramadan, so they could actually break fasting and eat.
Right.
And I was so pleased to see a diverse crowd of people that had attended. Of course, a number of our city council members, W.L. Pate, Virginia Jordan, I believe it was Robin Mouton, they were in attendance along with the mayor and other elected officials and just everyday civilians. And it was very heartwarming to see that despite the rhetoric we see on social media and the hateful Islamophobic comments that I think are just rooted in ignorance. Because most of the time when you ask somebody, how many Muslims do you have as friends? They say, we don't have any. So it was great to see that camaraderie.
Do you think they probably just don't know? Because they probably, do you think they do have like friends that are Muslim that they just don't know are Muslim? Or
I think that they would be hard pressed to not know if a friend of theirs is Muslim.
Probably so. If they're really observing it, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
I speak strongly out against this, and I'm quite opinionated about it. I cannot stand prejudicial behavior that is unwarranted. I cannot stand this xenophobic mindset of the other. Right. And again, we talked about earlier, and this is what plagues Beaumont. We live in our little boxes. We talk about, whenever I was in Austin, the community engagement there is phenomenal.
Yeah.
People thoroughly care about their communities. They want camaraderie. They want to see economic development and improvements to city infrastructure. And their voter turnouts are, through the roof.
Yeah.
And then somewhere like Beaumont, you have more people that talk the talk on social media than actually go out of their home, out of the bar, out of their place of work, and vote.
Yeah.
And I think that is going to be the bane of our existence for quite a bit of time.
Yeah, there's definitely no shortage of complaints around here.
Right. A shortage of complaints, but not enough people that show up to want to provide solutions.
Yeah. I definitely feel that. We get a lot of complaints in Lumberton on the economic development because Lumberton has a lot of neighborhoods. It was kind of zoned a little weird because it grew so fast. And there's no city property tax. So the city survives on sales tax only. Sales tax and hotel tax, which is only 2 hotels. It's amazing that we even have enough money for a police department, but we do. So when we have a new business come up, there'll be an empty plot and there's construction. There's empty plots and construction going all over. It's booming. The population has probably doubled since 2010.
Yeah, I imagine.
Most of the new businesses are what's in demand, and they just so happen to be donut shops, car washes, gas stations, because so many people come through, Mexican food restaurants and things that, of that nature. And I keep telling these people, like, they'll say, why does the city let, multiple businesses? I said, the city's not in charge of turning away economic development. They only have sales tax dollars. They would greatly appreciate any business owner that wants to come in and take a risk with their own money and open up a brick and mortar. And if you go to a donut shop every morning, there's a line of cars wrapped around it. They're selling out by 10 a.m. because all those moms are driving through there on the way to school.
I see a lot of that in Finette.
Yeah.
There's a donut shop right there off 124.
And so I tell people, I said, nobody's out there, voting with their checkbooks on salads. There's not, that's what people are getting because that's what people are buying. Yeah. And same thing with car washes. If you go through the student parking lot of Lumberton, there's like $50,000 trucks and SUVs in the student lot, and every house has about 4 cars. And so also the city limits is rather small. The city limits, population in 2010 is dwarfs in comparison to the municipal utility districts of all the water customers. You know, it's almost quadruple that of the surrounding area. I live in a neighborhood that's one of the biggest subdivisions in the area, and it's outside the city limits, which is Westwood. I think the big West, there's several phases, but I mean, it's almost like 400 homes, you know, all through there that are outside the city limits, not even included in the numbers there. So, it's an interesting community. It doesn't have a downtown because it's just two streets kind of straight through.
I experienced the same thing. I went to, there's what's the name of it? It's in Port Neches. It's like in their version of a downtown.
Yeah, probably probably Port Neches. Port Neches is the one that has a street with the buildings on each side.
Yes, but there was a great place that I think more people should go and support. You go and you can get beer, wine.
Yeah, there's the brewery.
Yes, that's what it is.
Okay, and then right down from that is the Avenue Coffee Shop, which is real trendy. And there's one that's coming soon called Maniacs, which is going to be an axe throwing bar. So you can, be a Viking. You can drink your beer, throw an axe on the wall.
Drunks beware, huh? Hopefully.
Yeah, just don't throw it perpendicular.
Yeah.
Throw it straight ahead. But yeah, so I'm outside the city limits in Lumberton, so I'm not eligible to run for city council. I would have to move inside.
Do it
in order to do that.
I know you're a millionaire.
Yeah, it's like the people that live next to the plants. I'll just move.
Yeah.
But there's I go to some of the meetings as a spectator. They could definitely use some youth on the side. There's not a whole lot going on at the meetings. It's kind of like the mayor's. I think the mayor's getting ready to retire. A lot of people on the council are either retirees or they've been with the city for a while,
And I think that's what we have in the city of Beaumont as well. As a young professional, as someone who's a millennial, you're someone that I believe is a millennial.
Yeah, 37. I'm on the border.
Yeah, because you're the same age as Congressman Crenshaw.
Yeah, he's 35.
So, and he talked about being a millennial, so I'm pretty sure that's...
Yeah, pretty much. So growing up, when I was in high school, the term millennial didn't exist. We called ourselves Generation X.
Okay.
But it's really the people that are a little bit older than me that are Generation X. I think I kind of identify with them a little more, only for the same reason that when I was my freshman in college, I had the bag phone, like the zipper, and you open it up, and the phone.
Never heard of it.
You never heard of a bag phone? So it's like pre-cell phone. So you don't carry it around with you all the time. You basically keep it in your car under your seat, and if you have an emergency, you whip it out and make a call.
My grandfather in his truck, he used to have a phone that was actually in the center console.
Yeah.
Make phone calls.
So it's just like that, except you could take it out if you wanted to because it was in a suitcase bag. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's my freshman year of college. And so like sophomore year is like the Nokia brick, which has like no voicemail, no caller ID. You just call people, because voicemail and caller ID you had to pay extra for. So I was like, so I'm a good 21 years old before I'm, using like a flip phone.
Right. Well,
first iPhone was, I was already an adult. I was already,
My first phone was a Razor. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
It was just so sleek and cool. And
but you might have been a teenager though, huh?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
And so that's the only reason I say I don't quite identify with the millennials, because that's a lot of technology at an early age that I didn't have. Now we had dial-up internet when I was a freshman in high school, and then it kind of got popular at home. I was one of the first to have it on my neighborhood because I was really into that anyway. So I was begging my parents, and they even had dial-up internet plans that were on like pyramid scheme type programs, and I was like, I'm going to sell internet to people. I mean, they didn't know what it was. So I had dial-up internet until college, because college had a T1 line in the dorms, and it took, because I grew up in Elkhart, Texas, which had 1,000 people population then and has 1,000 people now. It's not growing anywhere.
Whereabouts is that?
That's about 2 hours north of here. It's in between, like here in Tyler, Longview area, kind of smack dab between Houston and Dallas. So it's deep East Texas. And then went to school over at Nacogdoches, Stephen F. Austin. But it took Elkhart a while to get like cable internet or DSL. So I didn't have fast internet until I got to the dorms of college.
Yeah. So. I remember when AOL was a thing.
Yeah, we were
the chat rooms.
Yeah, chat rooms, instant messenger. That was instead of social media. And you had to like know somebody's username and find them and everything. There wasn't any profiles or anything like that. But I lived in the heyday of Napster, like when we were just running wild with music. We had hard drives full of music, and
Yeah.
CD burners were coming out. So you could burn a CD. It took you like several hours to burn a CD, and then it would error, and you'd have to start all over
And then
again.
computer viruses if you're trying to get something free.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think the first year had really good songs, and after that, it was just garbage.
Yeah.
It was hard to find anything.
So I'm curious, what made you decide to move here? If you were in the East Texas.
Yeah, so I was at Stephen F. Austin. From there, that's actually where I started coaching gymnastics.
Mm-hmm.
There was a sports center that had a gymnastics team, a boxing team, and a swimming team. And I was doing the strength and conditioning for all those athletes, and I just kind of rotate them through.
Right.
But then I got more interested in gymnastics because that gym I was at didn't really have a whole lot of male coaches, and you have to do a lot of spotting, like repetitions over and over on bars and vault. You're constantly like, flipping the kids basically. And so that's usually what they have the male coaches do. The girl coaches would usually do balance beam and floor. And you have the guys to do the vault and bar because it's more like the power sport, and you have to, you have to kind of like hold the kids in positions and hang on to them, make sure they're not swinging off the bar. So I got more interested into that, and kind of, just really fell into it with hand-eye coordination better than most people would do. Most people probably couldn't have been a gymnast themselves, or most people that are a successful coach were a gymnast in the past. Where I played basketball, baseball, track, everything that was not gymnastics. And so after that, I got married while I was still, or actually had just finished it at Stephen F. Austin, moved down here, and my wife at the time was she was a level 10 elite gymnast, in her childhood, and she was from Beaumont. She had to move away to Houston for high level training. So it was her dream to move back here and open up a high level gym to where athletes wouldn't have to move away. Kind of like we're talking about young kids moving away to bigger cities. They wouldn't have to move away for high level gymnastics training. And so we ran a gym, and then eventually, as we separated and got divorced, we kind of wrapped up the business, and I phased myself out of it. And so I was kind of already here, and I already had kids. So now I'm just kind of
Just worked out that way.
Yeah. But I said it turned out great because, like I said, you can, in the business community, you can make a name for yourself down here. You can be popular. You can be well known, and that's something that I couldn't have done in a bigger city, or if I were in a smaller city, the same opportunities wouldn't have presented themselves. So I kind of like it down here.
Yeah. I mean, I do too. Definitely room for improvement.
Yeah.
But I enjoy living here. I suspect I'll live here for a few more years at the least. But it's always tempting with friends tell me about opportunities in Austin and wanting me to come back. It's an adjustment.
Do you live in the Beaumont city limits?
I do. I live off Walden.
Okay. Yeah. Nice area.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're eligible to run for many things if you.
We'll see what happens. If I can get enough support and financial backing, we'll see.
Yeah. The typical path, which is what I always tell people that encourage me to run. I say, well, I can't run for city council right now because I'm outside the city limits. And usually you go city council to county to state to federal. And I really just want to go straight to Congress. Kind of like Dan Crenshaw. But I'm not Dan. I'm not a war hero. So you almost have to have a niche to go straight up like that.
Right. I agree. I mean, for example, you're totally right. Nick Lamson, for example, started out as a high school teacher at Hebert, and then went on to county government, and then Congress. And so there's like this
stepping stone.
There's this stepping stone, and it also has to do with it's just the right moment. I think that if there's an incumbent in office, unless there's some serious scandal, it's going to be tough to try and unseat them. And it also has to do with the way in which redistricting.
Yeah, especially if the incumbent is in your party and they're well liked, then the easiest thing to do is to get on their side and have them endorse you when they retire.
Right, or get some dirt on them. No, I'm just
yeah. Either way, one or the other. But that's really something of consideration in my area because I would be in the district for James White for Texas House, very well liked. I believe he would someday want to go to Congress, which would be Brian Babin. Brian Babin, of course, is quite a bit older than you or I. We're going to be around longer than he is. So at some point, Brian Babin will retire from Congress. It would be easy for James White to step into that position.
Right.
That would leave the Texas representative open. And state is kind of tricky because you're in Austin 6 months out of the year, and you kind of have to be like independently wealthy, I guess.
Right.
You either have to be which most of them are a lawyer that owns their own law firm, or they're retired.
Which isn't always representative of their constituency.
Sure. Or a business owner that can pull themselves away. Randy Weber, for example, he's a business owner for HVAC in Pearland, so he can pull himself away and do the Congress thing whenever he needs to. Now at Congress, it's okay if you're going full time because you don't need to have a career per se.
Right. You get paid six figures.
Yeah. Your living expenses, everything, you're okay. Now Texas House is not the case.
It's like 11,000.
Yeah, it's not enough to survive on your own. So that's a tricky one to go for because it's very ambitious, but you would definitely have to have your finances in order to personally, and you couldn't really be an employee. Because like for me, I'm in a sales position, so they need me doing what I do every day. I can't just kick back. So I can't say, hey, I'm going to be in Austin for 6 months. My
mindset is, of course, I'm joking, but it's like I can find a sugar mama. I'll sign a prenup.
Yeah,
like just take care of it. No, but when I think about, for example, you would have a better opportunity than me to run for something of a higher office just because of the way in which things are districted.
Right.
From a Democrat, Republican standpoint, because we have had phenomenal individuals that I would argue are more qualified than some of the Republican incumbents, but because of the way things are gerrymandered, and yes, both parties have done it, but I would like to see something different with how we redistrict.
Yeah, and I tend to think that actually, me, how I am right now, I would fare better in Jefferson County versus Hardin County. I think I'm too moderate for Hardin County. Hardin County is one of the most conservative.
Well, that's why I like you.
Yeah, Hardin County is one of the most conservative counties in Southeast Texas. And I'm the young, moderate Republican. And I want to stay that way because my theory is that when my generation is the oldest in Congress, and, right now the oldest, they're in their 70s, 60s to 70s. So there's not a lot of moderate Republicans that are in their 60s or 70s. There's a lot of moderate Republicans that are maybe in their 30s. There's a ton of moderate Republicans that are in their 20s. And so when I'm the oldest, I'm going to have those constituents that are a little bit more like me. I'm a state delegate in the Hardin County Republican Party, but I also have solar panels on my house. Like my whole house is solar panels. On a day like today, I didn't use any electricity. I overproduced about 20 kilowatts and sent it back into the grid. Pretty cool. And I took a picture when I got them installed. I had the solar panels on the house and my Prius in the driveway. And I said, am I the coolest Republican or what? Right?
Yes,
I can get along with everybody. I have a truck too, by the way. I leave it parked.
So for those voters out there, he has a truck.
Yeah.
But, for me, I think that we need to get back to moderates.
Yeah.
Because, yes, for example, I'm far more liberal on social issues, as well as social programs, and more conservative with military and law enforcement, in the way in which we handle things like immigration.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, and I think it is the older generation is to blame, people have become more tribal.
Oh, for sure.
Because there were people who were lambasting the late John McCain for having the audacity to criticize the sitting president, who had the fortitude to say, I agree with this, I disagree with that, and I'm going to vote based on my conscience and based on my beliefs, not based on re-election pressures. Of course, he passed away.
Right.
But the point I'm making is you have individuals that were Republican presidents and Republican candidates that are now being called rhinos.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because they're not far right enough. And I think are we living in the twilight zone?
Sometimes we are.
I don't know what's going on. And I think that there are more moderates like you and I in both parties, but not enough to get out and vote.
Yeah.
And so you have the loudest on both sides. They're going to be there first week of early voting. And then it's like trying to pull teeth to get people to vote for their own interests.
Right. And I tell people, too, I say you can't make a difference if you don't win. And that's when you say, like, hey, you're pretty moderate. Should you be in the Libertarian Party? I said, no, because they're not going to win. And that's kind of what the Pauls did is, Rand Paul and Ron Paul, they ran with the Republicans because they knew they could win.
Right.
And now they were able to make a difference on some things because they were in that position.
Well, that's just like with Bernie Sanders. He's not a Democrat.
Right.
He was an independent for decades, and the only
he
just
knew
saw
that he had to have the machine in order to get to that position.
And it frustrates me that people have this assumption that that is what a Democrat is, and that's not what a traditional Democrat is.
Yeah,
and we tend to focus on both sides, a handful of radicals, when there are hundreds of other elected officials in the Senate, combining the Senate and the House, that are more moderate or who are willing to work together, but they can't speak out or stand on their own because they're going to be primary.
Yeah, I would imagine that 100% if I were to snap my fingers and win an election and I have the bright eyes and the bushy tail to go in there and make a change, that some of the old heads are going to sit me down and say, look, here's how it goes. Yeah. And that's exactly what happens.
And that's why people are so disenchanted with politics and why they don't go vote, because they don't think anything will change. And part of that is redistricting. Yeah. What does my vote count? They're going to win anyways.
Yeah. Stick a Democrat in Hardin County and see if they feel like their voice matters.
Well, that's what they did to Nick Lampson.
Right.
They put in parts of Harris County that he had never even been around or affiliated with, and then he gets drowned out. And then with District 22, which I think Pete Olson, that what we have are called partisan voting indexes. I'm sure you're familiar with PVIs, and it can be R plus 12 or D plus 6. And so if the way things are, you're never going to have a candidate that is going to appeal to both sides that's going to have a chance, because we have become so, I don't even know the word for it, because I don't even think that word exists at this point. We're in such a new point of politics that for years to come, I think our children and grandchildren are going to wonder, what the hell?
Yeah,
what is this? This is so archaic. Why did you redistrict things this way? Why do people have such mentalities?
In the early 2000s, the craziest thing in politics was Howard Dean screaming. And that was it. He was over enthusiastic about a campaign stop, and it like made him lose. And that was like the craziest thing going on. And if we could fast forward, or if you could catch somebody back in the early 2000s and said, hey, let me tell you what's going to go down in about 15 years, they would never believe it.
Well, I mean, even Barbara Bush said that she did not identify as a Republican before she died. Because it wasn't the party of Reagan. And I say that not to be generalized, but just the leader. I have some issues with that. But again, I think that we need to have more conversations like this, and I commend you on helping take a lead on this. And I'm sure you interview all sorts of people with different backgrounds, ages, mentalities.
Yeah.
And more of that needs to occur. And it would be nice if we could have something like this on local news. And I'm not talking about that Sunday.
Yeah, because they're debating.
They're debating, and it's slanted. I mean, my God, it's slanted. We need people that are in there that actually stick to the facts, and a true moderator that doesn't try to, fire up one argument and deplete another when they shouldn't even be involved in it.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on AOC? You think she'll get reelected?
Oh, without a doubt. I think she has one of the safe. That's just and it's just the way it is.
Maybe because of her district.
She has one of the safest districts in the United States, just as, I think a Republican has a safe bet here in District 14.
Yeah.
So, and I have a lot of respect for her. I think that she has garnered a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Whether you agree with her points or not, like the Green New Deal, is all of it practical? No. Is it all going to be passed? It's a resolution. So is it all going to be passed without things being ironed out? No. That's the point of a democratic process, where you have people that are willing to go back and forth and then come up with some legislation that what I believe would be a good compromise. So I'm glad that she went extreme, because that leaves room for movement.
Yeah.
And I truly do believe that climate change is real. I think that the propensity for violent storms to take place is more often than not. And I follow suit with the majority of climate scientists. And oftentimes, if you look at people that are critical of the merits of climate change, they're often in the pockets of the petrochemical industry, or they have some personal gain. Now, I'm not some far-off person that says do away with all trucks and do away with all plants. No. But we have got to start doing things to prepare ourselves for the varying energy needs that are going to be taking place in the next 100 years. Because we are so heavily reliant in Jefferson County and in Texas on petrochemical that I fear we are going to be economically disadvantaged within the next 100 years, because we are not putting enough of an emphasis in our county leadership and state leadership for renewable energy sources.
Right. Yeah, so if we keep pumping carbon into the sky for 100 more years, it's just overwhelming to see or to imagine what it might be. I think climate change is definitely real. There's a host of things that cause it. There's some things that we can change. There's some things that we can't change. We can't change our trajectory of the Earth, or how close we are to the sun, or our orbit, things like that, or the axis tilt. That could change on us. But the things that we can change are our carbon footprint, taking carbon out of the ground and putting the carbon in the sky.
And, I'm a firm believer that if industry has more options, the consumer, I think, if it's feasible, will default to more energy efficient and environmentally friendly means of transportation, powering of one's home. I think that we get lost in where people are like, well, you need to get a Prius.
Yeah.
Or you don't need to fly in an airplane. It's like, okay, we can use anecdotal examples of what a person should or should not do, but I think what we need to go is from a legislative standpoint, of an industry standpoint, and then let it trickle down.
Yeah.
Because I do believe that works.
Yeah, and for me, it was one of those common sense decisions. So I was in an outside sales position where I had a car allowance, but not a company car. So I started out in my truck just because that's what I had at the time. And I had a territory at first from Lumberton all the way up to Lufkin and Nacogdoches, pretty big area.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I drive my truck every day, I'm not going to make as much money as if I had a Prius. So I calculated out my car allowance to be about the same as the car note for the Prius. And then gas is like $9 for almost 2 weeks or something like that.
Wow.
So it ended up, the car's kind of paying for itself. And then my truck is parked because I'll just use the truck if I need it. I'm not hauling kayaks or boats every day.
Right.
It's only maybe once every few months. And so for me, that's what the decision was for me. It wasn't because I'm overly, tree hugger. It made more financial sense for me to not buy gas every other day. Mm-hmm. And I was driving more miles. And then just for fun, I was like, I wonder what it'd be like to Uber in a Prius. So I did a little side hustle experiment. I did like 600 rides, in the Prius. And that's actually how I met Suja. Is he had first moved from London, so he didn't have a car yet. He had to get his license, because he's driving on the other side of the road on the right-hand drive. And so he would request me to go to coffee shops. He's meeting people, in the evening, and we would see each other and hang out. And I don't really drive much anymore, because I kind of did it just for like a year or so, but that was fun. One thing I didn't like about the Green New Deal was I think it banned nuclear. What's your opinion on that? Because nuclear is clean. I guess obviously the reason they banned it was because of accidents,
I do think there are some concerns related to nuclear energy, not only for potential accidents and targets for terrorism, but also the waste.
Yeah.
Is that it has this half-life of thousands of years.
Yeah.
And so where do you put it? And I don't disagree with nuclear energy. I think that if it is a better alternative and it will save money and it will improve the environment and the air in which we breathe and reduce diseases and respiratory issues, let's look into it.
Yeah, I guess I should say, to clarify, it's clean while it's being used. It's maybe not clean after it needs to be thrown away.
Right. And, there were discussions about in Nevada with nuclear energy and then the fissile material and things of that nature, that they would store them like in mountains or like underground. Yeah. But it's kind of like, and this is another thing that I think about just, for the heck of it, but all this waste, the landfills, how much ground are we going to have to bury this stuff?
Yeah.
I really wish that politicians would talk more about working with industries and even providing more funding for research and development to find ways of sustainability. Because I think the electorate and by default elected officials, because they have to appease their bases, we are so short-sighted. I want tax breaks now. I want jobs now, no matter what the cost, no matter what changes in policy we're going to have to make. And it's like, okay, well, if you really do care about your kids and grandkids, why don't we start talking about 100 years from now? Let's talk about 15 years, but let's expand it to 100.
Yeah, very rarely do you get a politician that cares about 100 years from now in the moment. And I think people aren't opposed to nuclear. They're opposed to nuclear in their backyard. They don't mind if it powers their home and it's 50 miles away. But definitely, I think if you had citizens vote on, do you want a nuclear power plant in your city, people are going to, people that don't even know what are informed are going to just vote no just because of what they hear. Or there's a mini series on right now on HBO, Chernobyl. About that whole situation. So it doesn't have a good public image. I saw it more in foreign countries when I was flying over.
I had studied abroad in Japan, and I was living there in high school. And I had just gotten in with my host family after what had happened.
Was it Fukushima?
Fukushima power plant. And it was amazing to me, like, how much they relied on that one plant.
Oh.
Because when I would go into my house, they wanted to conserve energy.
Yeah.
So there was no air condition.
Wow.
They wouldn't turn on the lights because they were being mindful that there were going to be greater energy needs in other parts of the country. And to me, I don't see that kind of camaraderie in the United States.
Yeah.
At least not since 9/11. Coming together. And
yeah. That was really a time where everyone came together. I recently got to go to the museum, the new one, where they have the memorial. And it's underground, and so impressive because
in New York City?
Yeah, because it's one of the newer museums, so it's real technologically advanced on their displays and stuff like that. It's very impressive. And, definitely get a sense of patriotism when you're in that facility, and got to go in the new tower at the top and go to the observation deck. Yeah, it's a really cool feeling. Yeah, man. Well, we just cranked out an hour in here in the sauna.
Does it feel like it?
Yeah. Well, what's the next big thing for you?
For me, honestly, I would like to start working with government officials to see about bringing entities like Amazon distribution centers to Beaumont.
Okay.
Or somewhere in Jefferson County.
Yeah.
I think that, and that's just one example, but I really want to start working more with elected officials and lighting a fire under them, as I've said twice already, pushing them to push themselves, and at least trying.
Yeah.
And coming up with business plans, land options.
I think it's a misconception that Amazon puts out small businesses, because there's small businesses that sell on Amazon.
Right.
And there's many small businesses that have probably done $1 million in revenue because of Amazon. Because where else can you go to sell your platform, or to sell your goods on a platform as big as Amazon?
Well, and for example, distribution center in, the closest one is in Houston.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have a lot of territory between Beaumont and then the border at Louisiana. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of opportunity. Blue-collar jobs where their minimum wage is like $15 an hour for truck drivers.
Right.
It could produce hundreds of jobs locally, millions of dollars in local revenue. And in Dallas, the city of Dallas was actually instrumental in working with a business developer to bring a distribution center, and they're expecting 150, 200 permanent jobs.
Do you happen to know how many are in Texas now? There's Houston, there's...
I know there's Houston, Dallas area. I don't know the exact number, but I know that...
And then was it Austin? They were looking at Austin,
Well,
right?
they were looking at building, like, and considering a headquarters.
Like a regional headquarters.
And like, for example, Apple just is doing $1 billion facility in Austin.
Wow.
And I understand...
Are they going north Austin, probably?
I think so.
Yeah.
I haven't kept up too much with it.
Yeah, probably like Round Rock
I'm
area.
not trying to spread fake news, not intentionally.
No.
But
South Austin is just traffic. Oh, my God.
It is horrible, because I lived off I-35 South.
Yeah, is that where it's double-decker?
Area. They...
Part of it's...
some of them, they'll have those.
Yeah.
But... I lived off I-35 South, Riverside, and there's a lot of gentrification taking place and these business developments. In 1 month, I had me and 2 other roommates, and our rent went up $300 combined in year to year because of the developments and the property value. And so, because our lease ended year to year, so we had to renew, and then of course it went up. But it was just like, wow, And again, if there's anything that I can sign off on this, it's that. In ending this conversation, I am hoping that elected officials and business owners will be more proactive in garnering different industries beyond the petrochemical industry, which is phenomenal. It's important. It is the base of our area, but we need to build off of that base. And I call on people that are either running for office or who are in office to do something about it and to be more proactive and vocal, and not just the rhetoric of re-election campaigns. Because if you noticed, more people now are talking about retaining youth and diversity and economic development after the county judge race.
Right, yeah. Yeah, diversification. If you look at anyone's 401k, it's not full of just oil and gas. It's full of many, a little bit of oil and gas and a little bit of tech, a little bit of natural gas, a little bit of grocery.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
Yeah. Well, Joseph, man, I had a great time.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope I can come back.
Yeah, you're welcome back anytime. I'll have to get you on. And I know you're going to do great in your next endeavors,
Hope so.
whatever that may be. I quit telling people good luck. I don't say good luck anymore. I say I know you're going to do great because I want to give positive energy to everything.
Preparation meets opportunity. That's what Oprah says. She doesn't believe in luck.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. All right, man. Well, great time. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Great episode, Joseph. Thank you. So we talked a little bit about the Southeast Texas Young Professionals Organization. Nominations for 40 Under 40 are open now. The deadline is August 13th, 2019. And the awards reception is going to be Tuesday, November 5th, 2019. So think of those people that you know that are between the ages of 21 and 40 that exhibit some of the following qualities. Recognized industry leader with a constant take charge attitude, business acumen, sharp business-like approach to efficiency and change, respect of colleagues, community service, and 39 years of age or under on August the 13th, 2019. Nominations must be submitted online. So just Google Southeast Texas Young Professionals Organization. It's going to come right up. Click on that link, click on 40 Under 40, and just follow the instructions for nominations. I'm Tyler, your host of the Tyler Knows Everything podcast, where the nose is crossed out because I always want to learn more. See you next time.